What's up, squad? It's Brandon from the Bantu Sun. Thank you so much for joining me today. So, the big story today is Secretary of State Marco Rubio meeting with his counterpart, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, right now, as far as peace talks for ending the conflict with Russia and Ukraine. And it's a lot of things going on that I'm trying to grasp it right now, but a lot of it is just this recent turn to authoritarianism. And anybody that has ever read the book Animal Farm knows exactly what I'm talking about. This is how it is done. You see, America is stepping away from a lot of its allies. Like, they're pretty much going along with Russia, right? And Russia, who many believe they don't share the same Western values. Like, that has always been the case. America's been a maritime power, and Russia is a continental power. But Putin has been running Russia for decades. They don't really have elections in that regard in Russia. And that's their culture. He gets the job done. The Russians like it. I love it. That's not the point I'm trying to make. But the point I'm trying to make is the blatant disregard of the Western allies for doing this. Now, I think this is really going to throw a wrench of a lot of things. And then look at where they're doing it at, right? They're doing it in Saudi Arabia. This is like the kingdom of MBS. And don't forget, Saudi Arabia under MBS is accused of assassinating the journalist Khashoggi in their embassy in Turkey. This is where they decide to have the peace talks. This is the trusted middle ground. Not a country such as maybe a Hungary that you can say, or a Turkey, but in Saudi Arabia. But this is where they have chosen as the middle ground place, and I thought that's interesting. So, listening to the preliminaries of what's coming out, it sounds like Russia gets to keep the land. They want their land. Russia gets Ukraine to basically be demilitarized. No Western forces there. Ukraine doesn't get to join NATO. American businesses are expected to start opening back up and developing relations with their Russian counterparts. Removal of sanctions. It really is pretty much conceding. I'm not sure what the West get out of this, right? Other than, and this may be a big deal, other than stop spending money on Ukraine, but they're spending money on Ukraine in a war that Ukraine was probably given the go ahead. It reminds me of that whole the Iraq-Kuwait situation where Saddam Hussein probably thought he was a little bit too zealous and invaded Kuwait, but there supposedly was a lot of nebulous circumstances around that. What I'm basically saying is this may have been some double talk going on here, because I doubt Ukraine would have been so aggressive, so assertive, if they didn't get the urging from the West. They knew they were going to go against a major power in the world, and they decided to move forward. And Trump is pretty much putting the blame completely on them. And then not only putting the blame on them, but he said, we paid you a lot of money. Everybody know a lot of that money probably went this way, that way, fell through the cracks through backdoor dealings. And Trump is basically making them accountable to pay the money. So Ukraine is pretty much left on the outs at this point of the game. So the turnaround on allies, the basically erosion of trust by this current regime, I just find it to be so interesting. And not on top of that, it's just weird things on weird things. You got Elon Musk just running around with all this authority, growing his little empire within government. You have this embrace of Russia at the exclusion of Western allies. And you got Zelensky over here saying, I just saw a quote where Mohammed bin Salman, the leader of Saudi Arabia, was just talking about how he's going to debrief Zelensky on what happened with the peace talks. Like, Zelensky country is actually fighting a war, and he's getting secondhand debrief It's not even coming from the United States. And Zelensky, ironically, and this is another thing. What country did I say I was really interested in knowing about? And that's Turkey, because Turkey's been running amok. Because Russia's been getting maligned and ostracized, and a great beneficiary of that has been Turkey. Whether you check Nagorno-Karabakh with Azerbaijan, Armenia, check Turkish support of the Libyan government against Marshal Haftar, the warlord operating out of the east, and how Turkey Bayraktar drones actually defended the Tripoli government. Whether you're talking about deals in Qatar, energy becoming the energy center. Can't forget Syria. So turn up the turn up the turn with the overthrow of Bashar al-Assad in Syria. Turn up the turn up the turn. Turkey's really been benefiting the most from Russia's erosion of power. Turkey's even going to Africa trying to get into some of the military markets and weapons markets. And ironically, while America and the U.S. are meeting in Saudi Arabia, President Zelensky of Ukraine is meeting with President Erdogan in Turkey. So I thought that was really, really interesting. But Europe's kind of like sit there with their jaw dropped. They don't know what just happened. They got left in the dust, and they we call it stuck up a creek without a paddle, and they feel as though they did everything they had to do, went lockstep with the U.S., and then the U.S. completely excludes them from this peace process. And that's debatable whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. But with Europe's sideline, Ukraine's not even involved, but Ukraine said we're not going to accept it if we're not involved in the conversations. But that's just talk, because they're not involved in the conversation. And it looks as though Trump is determined to move forward. So right now, it's just a matter of expediency and what this is going to create. So the ripple effect, the consequences, intended and unintended, is going to be very, very interesting over the next, in the near future, regarding this relationship between U.S., its allies, and its former antagonist, Russia. Just a few months ago, the U.S. was trying to overthrow the current regime in Russia, and now all of a sudden it looks like they're cozy buddies. And I think some of this, I don't know the grand strategy yet. Like I said, I really haven't understood Trump. Maybe it is a march toward authoritarianism. Maybe a more authoritarian form of government is Trump's cup of tea, and maybe he like authoritarian leaders. But maybe I remember Henry Kissinger once talked about when they were trying to partner with China, their goal was always to be closer with Russia and China than they were with each other. And one thing that has worked against the West in all of this is Russia's closer relationship with China and India through its exports. Obviously, Russia kind of had to bend the knee with those guys because they weren't in a bargaining position. But I think Trump is once again coming in and trying to befriend Russia. Russia's still a member of UN Security Council. He wants to put them back on and make the G8 again. So he wants to bring the Russians back in. So it's a real interesting scenario at this moment, and it still has a lot to play out. But right now, America is determined to go it alone under the Trump administration and rebuild relationships with Russia, which seems in the short term at the expense of their Western allies in Ukraine. So that's what it looks like from my perspective from the outside looking in. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you got any insight, comments, like, agree, disagree, love to hear below. Like, share, subscribe if you enjoy the content. Until next time, take care. Bantu up.